All right, I know you're already aware of this, but conflict is inevitable in a relationship, which means avoiding conflict is a bad strategy for a relationship. And take that from somebody who's a conflict avoider. I like peace, and peace is not all bad, but don't make the mistake of thinking that the absence of conflict is always an indicator of a good relationship. That's a myth. And if you believe that myth, it's going to cause you a lot of frustration and disappointment in a relationship. So it's not always the conflict that matters, but how we repair and recover after conflict that really is an indicator of how well a relationship was going. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to give you 5 steps to help recover and repair after there has been conflict. That's today on Relation Shots. Hey, welcome to Relation Shots. My name's Eric Wooten. If this is your first time hanging out with us, welcome to the place to get practical relationship advice that actually works in a real life relationship. Imagine that. If you've not already done so, go ahead and click the subscribe button and the bell notification so you don't miss any upcoming videos. If you would like a free guide to intimacy, you'll see a link in the description area below. You can click on that and download your free guide to intimacy. If we can help you in any area of your relationship, we'd love to do that. We'd love to be a part of your relationship journey. If you're a married couple, listen, I fully believe with all my heart, the number one key to success in a marriage is the presence of community in a couple's life. And so our marriage membership is that place to find community, to find resources, videos, worksheets that can help you on your own, but also a way to get connected with other couples, get support from other couples, or husbands from husbands, wives from wives, have some live Zoom experiences as well. So you want to check out our marriage membership so you're not trying to do marriage alone. So let's talk conflict. All right, so conflict's inevitable, but couples who are genuinely happy in their relationship tend to be couples who manage conflict in ways that are usually gentle and more positive. They're the kind of couples that actually can understand each other's perspectives. They want to seek to understand the other person's reality and feelings, and they generally want to work towards a compromise that feels like a win-win for both of them. And I know that sounds a lot easier to say it than it does to do it. And so in relationship, we often damage and hurt each other, not intentionally, but conflict can often do that. So when that happens, we need a way to repair and recover after there's damage been done so that it doesn't become perpetual and just pile on top of each other and get us to a place where we feel like we don't know how to get back. So I want to give you 5 steps that I think should be a part of everybody's system for recovering from conflict and damage in a relationship. But before I give you those 5, let me just say 2 things real quick. Number 1, what I'm about to share is not a place to go back and re-argue for why your perspective's right and their perspective's wrong. This is a way to get understanding of the other person's reality. And guess what? If your partner feels like you're trying to understand their reality, they're probably more likely to want to understand your reality. And number 2, I would say don't even try this right after the conflict when emotions are still elevated. You want to do this at a later time, come back and revisit it when the emotions have subsided and gone down a little bit. You're going to find a lot more success. So 5 steps to help you recover and repair after conflict in the relationship. Number 1 is express feelings. We need to go back and share, how were you feeling in the moment during that conflict? Were you sad? Were you disappointed? Did you feel abandoned? Did you feel disrespected or unappreciated? Were you worried about something? Were you fearful of losing the connection and attachment in the relationship? Because in the midst of conflict, the only emotion we tend to see is anger. They're mad, they're evil, they're hurtful, they're against me. They're the enemy, I'm defending, and all we see is anger on both sides, but it's not just anger, there's something underlying it. And so to be able to go back when you're calm and say, this is how I was feeling in the moment, I promise you it's a lot easier to give grace for and empathize with other emotions not called anger. It's hard to empathize with someone who's just mad and mean. It's easier to empathize with somebody who was worried, who was fearful, who was sad, who felt unappreciated. So part of the process is going back and saying, how were you feeling in that moment, and sharing your feelings about that moment. Step number 2 is you need to share your perspectives. So each of you probably had a different perspective on the realities of what was happening in the situation and often the details of the situation. And many couples get stuck just arguing about the details of the situation. Well, you said this. Well, that's not exactly what I said. Well, you did this. I didn't exactly do that. You're missing the heart. Maybe you didn't say exactly that, but what I heard was something along those lines. And so we often have different perspectives, and we need to go back and share those perspectives and understand those perspectives, right? And part of the process, I've talked about this in other videos, we have to validate their experience and perspective. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it, and this is where couples get stuck. If I disagree with your perspective, now I feel like I can't agree with you or I can't support it and I have to argue against it. No, you don't have to agree with somebody to validate their perspective. You could say something simply like, it makes sense to me why you felt that way based on your perspective of the situation, right? I haven't said whether I agree or disagree with their perspective. What I'm doing is I'm validating based on what you're telling me that you felt or thought happened, and I can understand why you were feeling this way. So we need to validate their perspective and have them validate our perspective so that we have some understanding of each other's perspectives. Step number 3 is identify triggers. Listen, we all have triggers. We all have stuff that words maybe, or tones, or a situation, or proximity, different things that may trigger us, which cause our emotions to escalate and elevate, and we respond or react in ways we wouldn't normally do. And so we need to be able to go back and identify, this is something that happened, something you said, something that occurred that triggered me in a certain way and caused me to respond. Now, researchers call these enduring vulnerabilities, which are often things that happen way before this relationship ever started. But when something similar happens in this relationship, it triggers us from the past. And so we maybe need to explain that, hey, the last time I was feeling this way was in a last relationship or as a child or some different things. Whenever somebody doesn't let me speak, maybe that triggers me back to not having a voice in my family at home, where I was told to just shut up and just sit there and don't express anything, and so it triggers me every time. Or maybe I was controlled, so anytime I feel controlled, it's a trigger for me. But we need to be able to go back and say, listen, I felt judged, I felt controlled, I felt out of control, I felt abandoned, whatever it might be. We have to be able to identify the triggers so that our spouse can try to avoid that trigger in the future, but also so that there's some recognition around this happened and here's a reaction after it. And we can stop that before it begins to escalate too far. So you need to be able to identify, go back and talk about the triggers that may have occurred in that conflict so that we can avoid those in the past. Step number 4 is you need to take ownership. Listen, you need to own your side of the conflict. That's called taking responsibility. And when you take responsibility in a relationship, things go better. That's just a fact of life. Now, I don't care if you feel like the other person was 99% to blame for the situation. Guess what? Point out the 1% and take ownership of it. Don't point out, well, you did 99, I did 1, so I guess just completely own your 1% if that's like you feel all that's there. If you feel like it was them, and then you just responded with a word that wasn't okay, take ownership for that. I shouldn't have responded the way I did. Not, but I wouldn't have done it if you didn't do it. Just take complete ownership. Part of recovery and repair is you taking ownership for your part, your spouse taking ownership for their part. And when two people take ownership, those relationships prove to be happier and more successful. And then the last step is just brainstorm new behaviors. So I think when you go back and you go, hey, what could we have done different? And each of you do that. What could you have done different that maybe would have prevented it from escalating or stopped it from ever turning into a conflict? And what could I have done better that would have kept it from escalating and not allowed it to turn into a conflict? And then make a commitment to trying to work on new behaviors and make a commitment to that. You're now working together against the problem. And so you're coming up with new behaviors and new ways to do things. So there's 5 steps that I think should be a part of every couple's recovery and repair process after there's been damage in a conflict. Find a time. Sometimes you need to schedule a time or an appointment to circle back and talk about it, or maybe just when you're in a calmer spot, you can circle back and go, hey, I'd love to talk about the conflict we had yesterday or the day before and how it didn't go well, and see if maybe we can we can grow and get better in this area. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, or maybe there's a different way that you found in your relationship that helps recover and repair that may be helpful to somebody else who's watching this video. Let's have a conversation in the comments section below. I would love to hear of what's working in your relationship, and then maybe if you're trying these steps, how that's worked out for you. Would love to hear that. Drop a comment below. And again, as I said, if there's any way we can walk with you on your relationship journey, we would love to do that. Let us know how we can help you to strengthen your relationship so that it is enjoyable and growing and thriving. Until next time, I'll see you right back here on Relation Shots.